No doubt you've heard somewhere at some time that great swords aren't so great. Well, guess what, kiddo? Today, Karl Franz is here to take your lunch money and prove that you're wrong by moving forward with his great swords to engage the Green Tide. Yes, that's right, the mad Slade himself taking the Empire here with 5 great swords, Karl Franz, Gotrek, and Felix. No need for a caster. The Chad levels are off the charts. We've got Reiksguard here to back them up, and is that it? Are there some Vanguards in the corner? Ooh, looks like some Outrider grenade launchers and the Zintler's Reiksguard. Opposing them is a more sensible army, certainly. It does seem that this Greenskin player was expecting some cavalry. We've got Orc Boy Spears, plenty of them mixed in and around. Skarsnik himself, anti-large armor piercing, can duel Griffin Lords quite well. He's got an Orc Shaman, 4 magic, and then it looks like some AP cavalry here. Squig Hoppers, Dirkit Squigs, Death Creepers, and Mangy Marauders. Plenty of light cavalry regiments for now, and getting chased there. And over here we've got the 8 Loons and the Warlord's Boys, as well as some Vanguarded. I love the Vanguarded, yeah. Skulkers, which do have AP, but out of position pretty significantly. They're not going to be able to control the movements of any of these cavalry. One Reiksguard does get out in space. They are going to engage these Death Creepers and do some pretty good damage to them, but actually the regeneration of the Death Creepers means they'll last quite long, and in the meantime they're taking some armor-piercing arrows. Not super high damage, but still 10 AP per shot. Arrows in the side there, pretty uncomfortable. But let's see. Yeah, it does look like they're eventually going to work through the Death Creepers. And Slade here, yeah, Zintler's Reiksguard, Vanguard Force, manages to get in, shut down that Hammer of Gork, Outriders grenade launchers, blasting through the support spear, and then looks like a Foot of Gork blasting the advancing greatswords as one unit. Gets into some gobos here, of course. You would expect they're just going to cut through some gobos, no big surprises there. In the front line also engaging with some Orc Boy Spears. 2 that got stomped there, took some pretty significant HP damage, but looks like the Zintler's Reiksguard moving back. I think Slade probably senses some shenanigans are afoot. After all, he is well versed in the secret ways of the goblins. And moving these Reiksguard back to defend, even though a lot of these units just now popping into visibility, he does see them. But, oof, that Dirkit Squig, just Squig Hopper in general, I guess, the charge into the rear of the Greatsword certainly helps. The one Greatsword, at the very least, manages to break those Orc Boys, turn around and countercharge, which is going to help. They're still going to take a lot of damage, but less so. Well, they'll do more damage in response, and they will take less damage, actually, because more of their melee defense gets applied anyway. Here we go, being popped. Really nice timing with that fungi here to keep those Reiksguard locked in until those nasty Skulkers can come in, follow up with some smoke bombs. Felix has got his sword out. He's going to run in, smack that Great Shaman in the back. Or the Orc Shaman, rather. Not such a great Shaman. Not as great as these great swords, certainly, who are continuing to fight here. This side kind of turned around to face the spotted goblins. And Zintler's Reiksguard then, yeah, dove in here. Wah, being popped, and here we go. That is going to be a big damage spike as those nasty Skulkers land on these great swords. Zintler's Reiksguard is getting absolutely torn to shreds there. Wow, that Orc Shaman gets pummeled by Emperor Karl Franz and Felix together. Looks like Gottrek's also mixing it up with Skarsnik and Gobla. Do count as infantry, so they're not going to be hit by the anti-large bonus of Gotrek. But, I mean, 3v1, that is a nightmare scenario for Skarsnik. He needs to get out of there as soon as possible in the screen with his some of the mobility troops to not get killed. But, anyway, yeah, it's some great swords continuing to just prevail here, cutting through goblins left and right, still forming a pretty tight little defensive formation there, although the heroes of the Empire are isolated away from them, which is a little bit of a problem, but we'll see if this hero hammer is able to grind through. Yeah, with Skarsnik being down, they really don't have much in the way of single target, single entity damage. Like I said, this build was definitely focused on other things. Probably did not expect this composition in any way, shape, or form. That being said, heroes, as they kind of get isolated here and separated, that dropping of the melee defense as well, fermented fungi, maybe some of these Orc Goblin infantry in a surround can actually get some hits Trek not taking too much damage there so far. Of course, Felix will also be healing as well, so not only do you have to get through, you know, their health bars, but also through the healing of Felix. Might be throwing out some helping hands there as well for damage mitigation and extra melee attack. Looks like the grenade launchers have been able to operate freely the whole time, thanks to the early play by those Reichsguard taking out the light cav. And like the Squig Hoppers didn't really ever pursue them. Not that they would be able to catch them, especially with them being tired. The Outriders are a little bit faster, although I guess if Slade slipped in micro, the Squig Hoppers could catch them. But nonetheless, staying focused on trying to kill these great swords. And they're standing firm and tall. Proud men of the Empire. That's right. And of course, anti-infantry bonus will apply against Skarsniks as they kind of saturate in on a surround there. It looks like that's army losses. So relatively quick one today. But yeah, I'd love to see the performance by these greatswords, even though technically only like one of them pays for itself in terms of raw damage value. The Outriders actually get 533 kills, to 44,000 damage dealt, and 2,400 gold value. Yeah, like I said, the early play by the Reichsguard, even sacrificing themselves to a pretty fair degree to just take out some of these light cavalry, waste a lot of their ammunition, you know, just kind of neutralize that aspect of the battlefield. And then also from the Greenskins perspective, maybe detaching those Squig Hoppers, at least one, just to kind of chase the Outriders around and not really let them set and shoot free. Definitely could have helped quite a bit, but I love the lads sort of all on foot together. No need for a caster, just the three foot dudes. Carl being the foot dude emperor, of course. Yeah, I was gonna say lord, but that is a lowly title for such a character. But yeah, at least one great sword, 10,000 damage dealt. I mean, the others, yeah, over 100 kills each. So even though they didn't have a really quality infantry to fight here, just cutting through chaff while having the armor to resist some of their damage is definitely a calling card to the greatswords. And here, even against some like armor-piercing tools, they still are able to get the job done. I mean, Skulkers unbuffed are pretty bad, to be honest. With buffs, they definitely can do well. This one here manages to get 800 value there. Yeah, with the Here We Go and the Wah timing, they can definitely get some good value, but the Mangy Marauders also feast on value, but then tactically, you know, the sort of the grenade launchers. So same thing, like these Squig Hoppers do get some good value going after the great swords, but ultimately allow the grenade launchers to just blow everything up. So yeah, pretty fun one there. Love to see that. Let's just quickly talk about great swords and Skulkers. Why not? Two very different units, but we can talk about them separately. Not necessarily compare them, but let's see here. Empire, yes, great swords. So 850. I mean, 95 armor is very good, don't get me wrong. Their basic stats are not amazing. In particular, 30 melee defense is pretty poor. But overall, great weapon strength, 25 AP, 14 bonus versus infantry. And of course, the Empire does have pretty good access to buffs. You've got the Warrior Priest, who's fairly underrated. You don't really see him that much these days, but there is some synergy here. Hammer of Sigmar, of course, and Shield of Faith. Both can help, not super long duration, but 25 seconds each. It's enough time to make a difference in a single engagement. And not to mention, you can do some other synergy with Banner of Eternal Flame if you do have Lore of Fire, you know, which, again, Cascading Fire Cloak directly buffs great swords, a single great sword, I should say. Also triggers Kindle Flame, which, if the Warrior Priest is standing nearby, will just give them a straight 20% damage boost. On top of, you know, everything else. Burning Head, obviously, always a good spell, but yeah, there's some limited synergy here, but of course, you've also got Carl himself, it should be noted, has the Reichland Runefang, which we did see there, melee attack and leadership buff in an AoE, helps that, yeah, the relatively low melee and defense attack stats. Also, he has Stand Your Ground, so you can buff both of them simultaneously, and really juice up those great swords to greater effect. Yeah, I will say, unbuffed, their stats are pretty subpar, and they're definitely limited in the engagements they can do very well in, but I think they are underrated in many aspects. Their slow speed does make them pretty hard to use in something like Domination. I don't know, I'm not the biggest Domination player, as you can probably tell, but in general, I think, yeah, they're they're a unit that's nice to have in your arsenal in certain matchups especially, and especially as a surprise pick, like something you see there. It's a very unusual army, especially having no caster, obviously. But it's something that you can catch your opponent off guard with, and it's even something like, you know, back in Warhammer 2, actually did have a build where I took Volkmar. Not nearly as good these days as he used to be on his big wagon, but it was something like Volkmar, Gotrek, and Felix with no caster. And I think I even maybe took it in one tournament. I'd have to actually go look and check my old videos and see if I posted anything about it. But yeah, I mean, both these guys stripped down together are like less than 2,000 points, so they're pretty good. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of options for caster lords for the Empire, but again, maybe you just don't need a caster. Just kidding. Yes, you should probably always take a caster, unless you don't want to. Anyway, let's just finish up real quick. Skulkers, yeah, they're another unit. Again, their stats are pretty bad, unbuffed, similar to Greatswords, actually. But they mainly have the smoke bomb going for them. I don't know, 500 points. I think these guys are not something you should be taking in most builds. Unfortunately, they used to be a good tool, and maybe in domination, you know, you can use them to like sneak some objectives and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the opportunist murder only hang on, it enabled if attacking in the rear or flank. So if you do get a flanking attack with these guys, they get a little bit better. Armor piercing damage goes up pretty significantly. Yeah, what is that, like an extra 8 maybe 7-8 armor piercing damage, and an extra 10 melee attack. Still only 16 melee defense and very poor leadership. So for a unit that's 500 points, they're just gonna run away. Yeah, I think these guys could probably cost like 450 and they'd probably be fine. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below. Maybe you think I'm crazy. Maybe you just need to buff their melee defense a little bit and they would actually be usable. But right now, I don't know. Maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a ton of use cases for Skulkers these days, sadly. Which does, yeah, it does make me sad. I'm a fan of the unit for sure. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.